Does the SAVE Act solve a problem that doesn't exist? Or is it simply a way to make citizens pay for a crime they didn't commit? I'm Chris. This is Fiercely Independent. Let's agree on this. Only American citizens should be allowed to vote in our elections. Or said another way, it should be illegal for non-U.S. citizens to vote in our elections. Now, the good news is that's already the law. So why is our administration pushing for a legislation that would force millions of Americans to track down their passports or their birth certificates or other documents just to prove something that the government already knows? Now, a fair, independent analysis of the SAVE Act would ask, how many unlawful votes would the SAVE Act prevent? And then compare that to how many unlawful voters will it burden? What's that trade-off? Now, what seems to be odd to me is that the proponents of the SAVE Act refuse to answer either of these questions with credible numbers. Luckily, though, there is a bipartisan policy center analysis that does have numbers and estimates that roughly 12% of registered voters, so that's roughly 28.4 million citizens, do not readily have the requisite documents needed to satisfy SAVE Act requirements. So does that mean 28 million people will instantly lose their ability to vote? No, it just means millions will face additional costs, trips, delays, dealing with replacement document requests before they can exercise their constitutionally given right to vote. And it's worth pointing out that every additional obstacle creates another point where a legitimate voter can fall out of the process. And how do we know this? Because the great state of Kansas already tried and it failed. What many people don't know is that Kansas adopted its own documentary proof of citizenship law in 2011. Applicants could present one of 13 approved documents, including a passport or birth certificate, but without those documents, an application was classified as incomplete. And after 90 days, it could be canceled, forcing the citizen to start all over again. So what was the result? Over a 3-year period, more than 31,000 applicants were denied voter registration because they had not completed the documentary requirement. The application that was used or that were suspended and canceled represented 12.4% of all new voter registrations during that period. Now compare that with the threat claimed. Federal courts found that over a 19-year period, Kansas identified a whopping 39 non-citizens registered to vote before the law took effect. That represents a 0.002% of all registered Kansas voters. Meanwhile, more than 99% of the people denied were citizens. Now, did the system catch unlawful applicants? Absolutely. But it also prevented a large number of citizens the right to vote. And not only did the system fail, but the law failed in the courts as well. Long story short, a federal district court struck down the documentation requirement. That went up on appeal, where the 10th Circuit affirmed, ruling that it was preempted by the National Voter Registration Act, and that violated, I should say, the Equal Protection Clause. This then went up to the Supreme Court, which declined to hear the state's appeal. Now, the courts did not say that citizens and citizenship does not matter. What they said was that Kansas had imposed a substantial burden without showing a substantial problem. And that's exactly what this administration is proposing to do, but on a nationwide scale. Do real voting violations exist? Yes. Is it a national crisis? No. Election integrity, and that's going to be the key buzzword you're going to hear, election integrity, it has two responsibilities. First, you need to stop ineligible people from voting. And second, you need to ensure that eligible citizens can vote. The SAVE Act is half-baked. It focuses only on the first issue of stopping ineligible people from voting. It completely ignores the second part. When a legal voter is rejected because of a paperwork issue, well, that is an election integrity failure. A voter who misses a registration deadline because they're waiting for a replacement birth certificate or passport, that is an election integrity failure. When a voter is rejected due to human error, that is an election integrity failure. The SAVE Act asks millions of citizens to prove their innocence because of unsubstantiated claims of widespread voter fraud. And Kansas already shows us that where this goes, it leads to tens of thousands of voters burdened compared to a microscopic number of violations. So let's call this legislation what it is. It is an effort to justify a voting obstacle while renaming that obstacle as election integrity and then forcing lawful citizens to pay the price. Our democracy works best when we make voter fraud inconsequential. And at the same time, it works best when we enable more voters to actually vote. The SAVE Act simply gets it wrong. It is a failure in the making, and we know that because of Kansas. So with that, I hope you have a great day. Stay fierce, stay independent. Talk to you soon.